Minnesota Vikings entered training camp in 2016 with fairly lofty expectations. Coming off a 2015 season where they finished 11-5, lost to the Seahawks in the playoffs in heartbreaking fashion, the world was expecting this team to compete, not only for the division, but possibly for the Super Bowl, if their young, first-time Pro Bowl quarterback, Teddy Bridgewater, could take one more step. But then, tragedy struck.
Doug, it turned out to be exactly what the Vikings feared and thought at the time of the injury, which set such a somber tone amongst the Vikings practice and led to the cancellation of a practice with 25 minutes remaining. You never see that in the NFL. And when you see a practice canceled and a quarterback taken by ambulance to the local hospital, that tells you the severity of the injury. And of course, as you just read there, the diagnosis came back torn ACL. The important part, as you mentioned, no nerve damage. So long-term, Teddy Bridgewater sounds as if he'll be all right, but clearly his 2016 season is going to be over at this point in time. He'll have that surgery. He'll be put on IR in all probability, and that will end his 2016 season, landing a devastating blow to the former NFC North champions, who now will turn to Sean Hill, their backup quarterback, as the new starting quarterback, while they look to add to see what other help is available in the quarterback market.
There are 12 teams in NFL history that have never won the Super Bowl. Of those 12 teams, only 2 have appeared in 4 Super Bowls. Those teams are the Buffalo Bills and the Minnesota Vikings. Over the years, Vikings fans have experienced a lot of heartbreak. Those 4 Super Bowl losses, but even more recently, in the last 20 years, you have Gary Anderson's missed field goal in 1998 after making 39 straight field goals and being a perfect 67 of 67 on extra points that year. Then in 2009, they lost in the NFC Championship game to the Bounty Gate Saints with Brett Favre doing Brett Favre things. And finally, Blair Walsh's missed field goal in 2016. Vikings fans have endured a lot. All of their best teams, all of their Hall of Fame players, and all of them had failed to deliver a championship to the city of Minneapolis. But with all of that out of the way, let's pick up where the intro left off. Teddy Bridgewater had just suffered a horrific knee injury during training camp. Some doctors even fearing that he could lose his leg. Weeks later, the Vikings would trade for Eagles quarterback and former first overall pick Sam Bradford. The Vikings, led by Bradford, would win their first 5 games in the 2016 season before going 3-8 after their bye week. 8-8, a disappointing end to a season for a team with such high expectations. Going into 2017, the expectations were still high. Sam Bradford was expected to remain the starter while Teddy continued rehab, though the Vikings did sign Case Keenum to be Sam Bradford's backup. Second-round pick Dalvin Cook was looking to take over where former franchise cornerstone Adrian Peterson, who had just left in free agency, left off. Young star wide receivers Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs were looking to take major strides and gain superstar status. And Mike Zimmer's vaunted defense was looking to have a bounce-back year. And boy, did they. Week 1, Saints at Vikings. Monday Night Football. It was an awesome game. The Vikings won 29-19. Bradford lit up the stat sheet, throwing for 346 yards and 3 touchdowns. Dalvin Cook scampered for 127 yards on 22 carries. Stephon Diggs finished with 7 catches for 93 yards and 2 touchdowns, while running mate Adam Thielen finished with 9 catches for 157 yards. While running mate Adam Thielen finished with 9 catches for 157 yards, cementing the two as the NFL's premier wide receiver duo. But late in the fourth quarter of this game, tragedy would strike again for the Vikings, as Sam Bradford would suffer what would later be a season-ending knee injury. After the first 2 drives of their Week 2 game, Case Keenum would take over as the Vikings' starting quarterback. With Keenum at the helm, the Vikings would lose 2 of their next 3 games, with the offense floundering in the 2 losses and the defense failing to step up in its place. The Vikings would also lose rookie sensation Dalvin Cook to a torn ACL in Week 4. After the 2-2 start, the Vikings would catch some traction, winning 4 games in a row heading into their bye week. That hot streak would continue as the Vikings would win another 4 games in a row following their bye week. 8-0 since Week 4, a 10-2 record heading into Week 14, where they would travel to Carolina and lose for the final time in the 2017 regular season. The Vikings, a team filled with injuries to their star players and their quarterbacks, would finish 13-3. The Vikings would finish that season with one of, if not the best defense in the NFL, having surrendered the least amount of total yards per game and the fewest amount of points per game, beating out the Jacksonville Jaguars, who many remember as the best defense in football. Case Keenum also led the Vikings to an above-average offense, finishing 11th in yards per game and 10th in points per game. But the Vikings finished bottom 10 in turnovers forced, which isn't great. But this is where Zimmer's philosophy of a more cautious offensive approach really did help the Vikings, as while they finished near the bottom of the league in turnovers forced, they were third in giveaways. The offense did not turn the ball over, which really helped Zimmer's defense in the long run. Case Keenum finished the year completing 67.6% of his passes while throwing for 22 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. Latavius Murray, one of 2 running backs to step up and fill the void left by Dalvin Cook, would finish with 842 yards and 8 touchdowns, while his backfield mate, Jerick McKinnon, would have 570 yards and 3 touchdowns, while also being a major receiving threat out of the backfield, with 51 catches for 421 yards and 2 touchdowns. Not bad for a third-string running back. Thielen and Diggs would also take the step they had hoped for, with Diggs finishing the season with 64 catches for 849 yards and 8 touchdowns, and Thielen finishing with 91 snags for 1,276 yards and 4 touchdowns, along with the always reliable Kyle Rudolph finishing with another 8 touchdown receptions. They don't call him Rudolph the Red Zone Reindeer for nothing. The defense, led by veteran and young stars alike, Harrison Smith, Eric Kendricks, Anthony Barr, Xavier Rhodes, Everson Griffin, Trey Waynes, and Danielle Hunter, really stepped into what everyone had been waiting for. Rhodes finished the season proving that he was one of the elite corners in the NFL. With Trey Waynes and Terrence Newman helping lock down receiving threats, Harrison Smith got to do what he does best: control the entire field. Smith would finish the season with 5 interceptions, leading the team, along with 78 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks, and 12 passes defended, proving again that he is one of, if not the best, safety in football. Eric Kendricks would lead the team in tackles while establishing himself as a top linebacker in the league. Everson Griffin would lead the team in sacks with 13, along with 25 QB pressures and 12 tackles for loss. Danielle Hunter, sharing snaps with Everson Griffin and longtime Viking Brian Robinson, would finish with 7 sacks, 11 pressures, and 12 tackles for loss. The best unit in football was ready for the playoffs, but their 13-3 record was good enough for a first-round bye, bringing the Saints to Minnesota for a home playoff game. Maybe it's time for a little revenge for 2009. The Vikings came out of the gate red hot, scoring 17 unanswered points against the Saints in the divisional round, starting with a 14-yard touchdown run by McKinnon, a 20-yard field goal by Kai Forbath, and finally a Latavius Murray 1-yard touchdown run off of an Andrew Sendejo interception, giving the Vikings a 17-point lead with 10 minutes left in the second quarter. That lead would hold until there was 1 minute and 18 seconds left in the third, when Drew Brees would hit Michael Thomas for a 14-yard touchdown. Then, with 13:09 left in the fourth quarter, Brees would hit Michael Thomas again for a 3-yard touchdown, coming off a Marcus Williams interception on a pass that was targeting Stephon Diggs. Remember that for later. With 10:12 left to go, Kai Forbath would make another field goal, giving the Vikings a 20-14 lead. Then, with 3 minutes and 1 second to go in the fourth, Brees would connect with Alvin Kamara for a 14-yard touchdown, 21-20, Saints take the lead for the first time. With 1:29 left in the game, Kai Forbath would sink a 53-yard field goal, 23-21. Vikings take the lead back. Then it continues to get crazier as Saints kicker Will Lutz hits a 43-yard field goal with 25 seconds remaining. Saints players, fans, and coaches were celebrating as if the game was over. US Bank Stadium was eerily quiet for the first time all season. One of the loudest stadiums in football, and you could hear a pin drop, it was so quiet. Minnesota would start the drive at the 25 following a touchback. Mike Remmers, yes, that Mike Remmers, would false start, backing the Vikings up 5 yards to the 20-yard line. Not a good start to the drive. 1st and 15. Keenum would hit Diggs over the middle for a 19-yard gain, and they would call a timeout. The final timeout the Vikings had in the game. Vikings need about 30 yards to make a game-winning field goal. 2nd down and 10. Vikings on their own 39. It was time for the play that has been summed up as Buffalo right, 7 heaven.
Receivers right, Thiel and left. Marshawn Lattimore 12 yards from Adam. Case on a deep drop, steps up in the pocket. He'll fire to the right side, caught by Diggs. Stay up! Oh my God! 30! No 10! Touchdown! Are you kidding me? It's a Minneapolis Miracle! Stephon Diggs and the Minnesota Vikings have walked on the New Orleans Saints. It's a 61-yard Minneapolis Miracle. I can't believe what I just saw, Paul. What an unbelievable play.
It was a Minneapolis Miracle. The Vikings and backup quarterback Case Keenum had just beat Drew Brees on the final play of a playoff game. Keenum, in an interview later in the offseason, would remember saying to his receivers while he was in the huddle, "I'm going to give one of you a chance." Diggs got that chance and made the absolute most out of it. The Vikings would go on to get beat badly against the eventual Super Bowl champion Eagles in the NFC Championship game. Now, I bet some of you are asking, Geek, what's the point of this story? Why still talk about it if they failed in the end anyways? Well, to answer that, we need to take a bit of a step back. We have to remember that this is a team that lost not only its starting quarterback, but also the quarterback they traded for to replace him. A career backup in Case Keenum would take over and lead this team on one of the most unlikely playoff runs in sports history. Does it mean less because they didn't win it all? No. It's proof that even underdogs have their day. Proof that no team, no matter the odds, can never be counted out. And that even as a backup, you can become a legend.